I'm having to remove a destination from the screen. Okay, save changes. All right, I'm going to. Oh, I think we're actually on.
Welcome to the Late Night Gamecock Show from Chief Sports South Carolina. Here are your hosts, Matt Anderson and Alex Jones of thebigspur.com.
Well, welcome into the Late Night Gamecock Show. I am your host, Matt Anderson. I'm happy to have you here tonight. And as always, I'm joined by my lovely, lovely co host, Alex Jones. Alex, how are you doing on this fine Tuesday?
Doing great, doing great. It's always fun to be back on here on a Tuesday night.
Yeah, this is what the late night show is all about. I know that everybody can't always get to the live streams that happen through the day. So if you're putting the kids down or already put the kids down, you finished dinner and you're just hanging out, we always want to bring you some Gamecock content here. So Alex, tonight on the show, pretty big one. It's time to talk a little bit about men's basketball. We're inside a month until basketball season starts, and I know that everybody right now is saying, "Oh God, they're only going to talk about basketball." No, we're going to talk about football too. It's just more fun to talk about basketball after a game like the Ole Miss football game this past Saturday. But I promise we're not going to spend too much time on basketball tonight. We obviously have to move forward to Alabama and maybe what the rest of the SEC looks like as well. And then we'll always give you our best bet picks. And Alex, I got bad news for you coming up later on in the best bet segment. So make sure you stick around for that. But we'll give you all those picks a little bit later. So Alex, let's talk basketball first. We'll do basketball and then we'll move on to football. Alex, just overall thoughts real quick about where the Gamecocks stand coming into the season. Any kind of back behind the stage coverage that you've gotten to see, players you've talked to, coaches you've talked to, maybe just scuttlebutt you picked up here and there.
Yeah, I think on the men's side, they're really excited. The coaching staff is really excited about the potential of this team. Obviously, you got a few pieces to replace off that last year's group, and Amici Johnson, Talon Cooper, and BJ Mack. But I think they feel like they are, in a position to do that. And when you have a potential first round pick and maybe a potential lottery pick in your front court, that's going to help too. So I think there's some excitement around this team and what their potential could be to hopefully build off of a NCAA tournament bid last year.
Yeah, I think whenever you're looking at the start of a new basketball season or start of any, sports season in general, you got to look back from where you came to figure out where you're going to go forward. And, with this particular men's basketball team, I mean, I just pulled up the statistics from last year. Just to recap for any of y'all that, haven't been thinking about basketball for a while, Michi Johnson has left the program. He has transferred to Ohio State University, back where he started his college career. Remember, Michi's a guy that played in 33 games, averaged 14 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists, 29 minutes a game. Michi was a hot or cold player, but when he was hot, he was one of the most exciting players in the SEC. BJ Mack also is off the team, moving on to graduate, and I think he's trying to play overseas somewhere. But that was 34 games played, 14 points, 5 rebounds, 1 assist, and 25 minutes per game. And then the straw that stirred the drink last year was Talon Cooper. Talon Cooper played in 34 games, averaged 10 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists, played the most minutes of anybody on the team last year at 34 minutes per game. And while I thought Talon had arguably, one of the best seasons of a Gamecock guard in a long time, you could see that he was kind of wearing down with all of those minutes that he played throughout the season. You lost Josh Gray, Stephen Clark, and Ibarua Diba. I think that's how you pronounce at least the last name. I always butcher the first names. But, Josh Gray became a vital piece on the team later in the season, had some big games, but overall was probably a disappointment for a lot of Gamecock fans after he transferred from LSU. And, we wish Josh the absolute best. He is a great, great kid. Great kid. Stephen Clark graduated and then Diba transferred. I don't know if he's actually found a home yet. But looking at this team coming up, what the Gamecocks have lost as in regards to transfers into the program. Jamari Thomas, a 5'11 guard out of Norfolk State. Really, really good basketball player. Averaged 16 points, 4 rebounds, and 4 assists last year at 31 minutes per game. Played in 33 games for Norfolk State, their leading scorer. Nick Pringle, a guy that a lot of Gamecock fans might remember from the NCAA tournament, that game that Alabama had against Clemson for Alabama to punch their ticket to the Final Four. I don't know if people realize this, but Nick Pringle is 6'10", 220 pounds. Only played 18 minutes per game last year for Alabama. 7 points, 5 rebounds, and 1 assist per game. Was played in 34 games, but Alabama had such a deep bench last year that a lot of their players actually didn't play, monumental minutes each game and were effective in their own ways. And then the last transfer to talk about is Jordan Butler, a South Carolina kid. His older brother, John Butler, also played at Florida State, where Jordan transferred from. Jordan appeared in 30 games, averaged 2 points, 2 rebounds, and no assists per game in 11 minutes of action. So Gamecocks really lost, I would say, 3.5 big pieces from their roster last year. They brought in 3. You have, the people that were on the roster last year, like an Arden Conyers and an Alston Hero, didn't play at all. They redshirted last year. I can tell you that Arden Conyers has been getting really good reviews so far in the offseason and in the preseason of work. Really skilled player that I think the redshirt year was perfect for him to add size, weight, skill, all of that. Alex Hero is Tyler Hero's younger brother. He's doing big things. He did big things at Kentucky, now doing big things in the NBA for the Miami Heat. Another kid that needed to add some weight, adjust to college basketball. But then, you look at the rest of the team, and like you mentioned earlier, it all starts with Colin Murray-Boyles, potential first-round pick, potential lottery pick. Just a kid that's seen his NBA stock soar towards the latter part of last year and during the offseason. Actually flirted with potentially going to the NBA draft last year. I think he would have been a second-round pick had he made the jump, especially at his age. But then you have, the stalwarts, Jacoby Wright. You have Miles Studi, Zach Davis, all coming back. Benjamin Bosmans-Verdonk is a kid that when he gets in there, he just seems to make some plays. I don't think he's ever going to be a guy you want 20 minutes of. But Morris Ugasuk, who Gamecock fans remember from last year, followed Talon Cooper around and tried to learn everything he could. I think he's probably a point guard in the future. And the big name is Cam Scott. Cam Scott is a freshman this year. Consensus top 40 player in the country, flirted with 5-star status at different points in his high school career. Looking at this, Alex, if you had to project maybe a starting lineup or a rotation, how do you feel like this shakes out this early, a month before the season starts?
Yeah, I think as we stand right now, I'm interested to see if you agree with who I would have in the starting 5. I would go Jamari Thomas, Cam Scott, Zach Davis, Colin Murray-Boyles, and Nick Pringle. That's who I think, which I think we know the front court's probably pretty settled. Like Colin Murray-Boyles and Nick Pringle are going to start. I think the question would be, how does that guard kind of rotation turn out? Like, does Jamari Thomas get it at point guard? Does Jacoby Wright get the point guard spot? Regardless, it doesn't really matter in the long run just because all those guys are going to play. But I think just that would be the question for that starting 5 is who's going to win that point guard spot in this Cam spot. I think Cam Scott's in a good position to win that 2-guard spot too.
Yeah, and Cam Scott's a guy that actually can bring the ball up a little bit as well. Yeah. I don't think that, he can play 100% point guard coming out as a true freshman, regardless of how good he was in high school, but he has some capabilities there. I think it's going to be tough to, especially early in the season, supplant Jacoby Wright. He's a guy that knows Lamont's system, has a little bit of height on Jamari Thomas, maybe about 3 inches, about the same weight. He played 23 minutes per game. Like you said, he's going to have a role. Yeah, I'll be really interested to see with this exhibition game we're going to get here soon and what we're going to hear out of their close scrimmage against NC State. And in the early part of the season, try and figure out, who gets that starting nod. But to your point, I don't think it really matters, especially when you look at, Cam Scott, 6'6", Zach Davis, 6'7", Colin Murray-Boyles, 6'8", and Nick Pringle, 6'10". That's a big lineup.
That's where my next point was going to be, is the size of that potential lineup. I mean, you think about it, if you have Jamari Thomas at that point guard, he's a 5'10", 5'11" guy, but when you go back and watch his highlights and look at his stats, like he's really good defender. Was an all defensive player in the MAC after being the MEAC being the MEAC player of the year, and it's a guy who can really get into the passing lane. So I think he's going to be a guy who's kind of like the X factor at that guard spot for what he can bring an energy to that defense. But when you look at that perimeter defense, I think with Cam Scott, and with Cam and those guys, and Zach Davis, I think they have a chance to be really disruptive on the perimeter because it's going to be long and kind of lanky. So I think defensively last year they were really, really good, and I wonder if they can almost take another step forward there in that regard just because of that length that they're going to have.
Yeah, I remember last year looking at Ken Pom and Bart Torvik in the preseason. And, in past years, the Gamecocks have been around like the 140s, the 150s in the preseason ranks. And last year, I think they started out at like 68 or 69 in the preseason. Maybe it was even the 70s. Ken Pom hasn't come out yet with his preseason analysis, but Bart Torvik has, and he has the Gamecocks at 55th in the country. I think with a lot of the unknowns that are on this Gamecock men's basketball team, and when I say unknowns, it's, does Jacoby Wright take a step up? Does he become, a Talon Cooper? Because, Talon was known for his assist coming out of Minnesota, but he wasn't really known for, everything he did for the Gamecocks from minutes per game and defensive awareness. He was very aware on defense. But then, does Morris Ugasuk make that jump? How ready is Cam Scott? We both think he is. Miles Studi, I think, is the perfect sixth man, and I think is a guy who could win SEC Sixth Man of the Year this upcoming season. Arden Conyers, what is he? Can Austin Hero take that step forward and be a shooter off the bench? Jordan Butler, he has ACC experience, played in 30 games, 10 minutes a game. He's a guy that can actually stretch the floor a little bit with his shooting as well. So I think that 55th in the country is pretty good for the preseason.
Yeah, and you mentioned Arden Conyers, and I meant to mention him earlier. I think there's some serious excitement from the coaching staff for what he can do this season. I remember we went and watched they had an open practice, and I think it was maybe over the summer, and you could just see him, he looks like he's taking a step forward physically, which I think was a big part of that the red shirt year for he and Austin Hero, just to have that red shirt year. But he looks like a guy who can be in the meet. I think we knew offensively what he could bring last year. I think it was just continue to improve defensively, and it sounds like he's taking a big step forward. And if you can have him coming along with the rest of those guys at that position, they're going to have some serious depth there. And I think it's just going to be really interesting to see how this team comes together in the preseason, because that was a big part of last year's team was that trip to the Bahamas and the chemistry that they built. Obviously, only being able to do that every 4 years. South Carolina couldn't do it this year, but we talked to Lamont Paris a couple weeks ago, and he sounds like that chemistry is right where they want it to be right now, and they like where it's at. So I think this team's starting to come together, and I think it's only going to continue to build excitement for the season that's just a little under a month away.
Yeah, and looking through, the schedule for the Gamecocks early on, I promise we'll get to football here after this, but you have North Florida, South Carolina State, and Towson to open the season. And then they have the big trip to Indiana, November 16th. Gamecocks should open the season 3-0. Indiana, according to Bart Torvik, is the 30th best team in the preseason, so that will be a test. But I think it's the perfect time for a test after you have NC State, who went to the Final Four last year in the closed scrimmage. Then you have the exhibition game. You're basically 5 game-type situations in before you travel to Indiana. Then you have Mercer. Then you go to the Fort Myers tip-off. You have Xavier. Xavier, according to Bart Torvik, is the 37th best team in the country. And, win or lose, you're going to play one of Michigan or Virginia Tech. Michigan, 33rd in the country, according to Bart Torvik, and Virginia Tech, 88th. Gamecocks did play Virginia Tech last year. Virginia Tech lost Sean Padula, kind of the best player on the court that night, I thought, for Virginia Tech. But then you have Boston College on the schedule. Boston College is a team ranked in the 150s on Bart Torvik. And then you have Clemson, 46th in the country. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 games before you actually get to SEC play. And I think it's very well balanced because, you're going to play 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games against teams ranked in the top 150. You're going to have plenty of opportunities for tests. And I think that, it's really good for not really the RPI anymore, but the net and the quad system to even get those games on the schedule. Having 5 of those And even the Boston College game is a road game, which could potentially be a quad 3, or quad 2, I should say, type win at the end of the season.
Yeah, I think this non-conference schedule sets up really nicely for South Carolina as far as, building that resume that you want to have. Because, at Indiana, that's a game that's going to be a great net game for South Carolina, win or lose. Then you have that Fort Myers tournament where you're going to play high-level teams no matter how you do. Like, you're going to play Michigan, Virginia Tech, or Xavier. That's, 3 teams that are, high-level college basketball teams. And then you have your games in there that, think are not your get-right games because you can't really – nothing in college basketball is guaranteed, but your games that, you feel like you should win. So I think it's, we saw that last year in the non-conference schedule. It's set up really nicely for that team as they continue meshing. And I think it's kind of the same story this year.
Yeah, you don't want to be 8-5 heading into conference play, but if you're 10-3, you're in a really good spot going into conference play. And I think the Gamecocks will mesh a little bit quicker than they did last year. Obviously, you had the big game against Notre Dame. You had the big game against Virginia Tech to start the season last year. And thankfully, the Gamecocks won both of them. But you also saw some scary moments like the Charleston Southern game last year. Yeah. So you don't take any of those games for granted.
Yeah, that Charleston Southern game, I know we're going to move on to football, but that Charleston Southern game, you think about it from a net standpoint, that game drug South Carolina down in the net and was something, honestly, like they won the game, but it was one that they couldn't. It for the whole year kind of held them down the net, but just take care of business and everything like that will take care of itself.
Yeah, and we do quickly want to give the women a shout out. The women are the premier program in college basketball. Yeah. I have very little doubts that they will not be the number 1 team in the country in every preseason metric. Dawn has that thing rolling. I do want to give a shout out. I believe that they have announced a sellout for the entire home season. So kudos to the fans, but even more kudos go to Dawn Staley and the women and what they've been able to do building this. You will not find a better college atmosphere in the women's game anywhere in the country, but I would put that atmosphere up against top 15 type arenas in men's basketball too. Yeah. It's something fun. So if you get the chance to go, if you're already a season ticket holder, make sure you get out there. It's so much fun.
Yeah, they got had a lot of pieces off of that team return from last year. Tahina Powell, Malaysian Full, Wally Tessa Johnson. So I don't think they're going anywhere. Like they're going to be, obviously probably the best team in the country throughout. And Dawn Staley's always bringing in great recruiting classes, and that's no different this year. So I don't expect they're going anywhere. And they're going. Imagine that once again they're going to be competing for national championships.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Well, hey, let's take a quick time out. And when we get back, we're going to flush Ole Miss, move on to Bama, and just talk about some other football things as we keep moving on throughout the night. So we'll be right back.
Welcome home. That's what the Gamecocks say. And so does nationally recognized the Barndominium Company, where they are building dream homes in the Carolinas, Georgia, and Tennessee. Their turnkey process can be custom designed and takes 6 months on average. Make your dream a reality. Visit thebarndominiumco.com. Thebarndominiumco.com.
I said, oh, Lord Jesus, it's a fire. Ain't nobody got time for that.
Disaster comes uninformed. During and after natural disasters or accidents, there can be a heavy loss to property. It can become extremely difficult to bounce back to what you knew before. Having your home or office destroyed or damaged by water, fire, smoke, or mold affects your personal and business lifestyle. Resto Pros of the Midlands is here to help. Open 24/7. Call them when you need them. 803-493-0170. Resto Pros of the Midlands. RestoProsMidlandsSC.com.
What Right to Bear is we're an association of members across the entire country, and what we offer is we offer legal defense in the event of a self-defense case. Nice. So it's not insurance. So we offer an attorney in the event that one of our members might have some type of an accident. ProtectWithBear.com. We've got all of our social media accounts on the bottom of our website. We've got blogs, articles, detailed description of all of the coverages in depth, and we'd love to have you come check us out and ultimately get the protection you need.
Morning, Carl. Usual?
Yeah.
Your oldest was in here the other day. Said the two of you took a trip down to my neck of the woods. How'd that go?
You might as well give me one of those Carolina cards while you're at it.
I knew I liked that one.
Yeah.
There you go, my friend.
Thanks.
Hey, Carl. Congratulations.
See you tomorrow, Freddie.
You bet.
Well, welcome back to the Late Night Gamecock Show. So happy to have everybody here with us. If you missed it and you're just catching up right now, we did have a relatively lengthy kind of open to college basketball. We said the season is a little under a month away. So make sure you go back and check that out. Want to move on from Ole Miss the best that we can. I think that at this point, whether you're on the bigspur.com, which you should be a member, because you're missing all of Alex's elite content over there, where he writes about 18 articles a day for your reading pleasure. Whether you've been on the bigspur.com, whether you've been at the water cooler at the office, whether you've had family dinners, whatnot, we all kind of know what happened last weekend in Williams-Brice Stadium. Obviously, it's becoming a habit for the Gamecocks to lay an egg at some point in the season in a big game. I don't think it's something that anybody that's affiliated with South Carolina, fan, player, coach, athletic department likes to see, but it's what happened. We can go back and we can rehash every coaching decision that Shane made. I think that, Shane would be very honest with you and say he'd like to take a couple of those back. But Alex, there's been so much talk lately about, does a change need to be made at offensive coordinator? Does someone else need to call the plays? Does Shane need somebody else in his ear, maybe one person in his ear during a game where he's leaning on for decisions? Just overall, your take on everything, really, Alex.
Yeah, I mean, it's very obvious the offense has to show improvement in this game or moving forward because the schedule is not getting any easier. I mean, you go to Alabama, who, is obviously a very good team. Then you go to Oklahoma, who's got a really good defense. And then you got the bye week and then head into that key stretch. So the offense just has to show improvement in pretty much every area. And that's something that, Shane Bierman kind of talked a little bit about today. And, it's going to be interesting to see what that offense just kind of looks like here against Alabama when they're having to bounce back from what they showed against Ole Miss.
Yeah, I wish I had that answer for everybody. I really do. I don't really know how you fix it at this point. Outside of players getting open. I mean, I think, Alex, you said from up in the press box that especially in the first half, you weren't really seeing a lot of separation from wide receivers. Now, why is that? I don't know. I don't know the route tree. I don't know the spacing. I don't know the levels. I don't know what they're trying to do. But for players not to get open when I don't think that Ole Miss's secondary, it was so good that the Gamecocks would be in an impossible situation to get open. And so much of that goes back on the quarterback too, is the quarterback letting it fly. One thing that I can tell you is that in the offseason, Dowell Loggins was quoted as saying, we're trying to work with Lenores and he's doing a really good job of letting it fly when he sees it. And if he throws a pick, learn from it. I wonder if that's just how comfortable you are in practice and, playing against guys where their tendencies a little bit more than you do when you get into SEC play. But one thing I still go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think they have to try to take more shots down the field because you think back, they had the Old Dominion game where they had the one that was a drop, and you can think of probably count, on your hands just how many times they've taken a shot downfield. It feels like, and I think now defense are going to start recognizing that and just start, not respecting the downfield shots, which makes those intermediate to short passes even more difficult because they're right there at you. So I think they've got to find a way to take shots down the field, at least try to open up the defense.
Yeah, and look, I'm still steadfast in this. I think Lenore Sellers is going to be a really good quarterback at the University of South Carolina.
Yeah.
I mean, we're maybe 3.5 games in. I mean, he played pretty much the whole time against Old Dominion. He played basically what you call it 3/4 against Kentucky.
Yeah.
Then you got the LSU game where he played a half. Then he didn't play against Akron, and this was really his first game with live bullets for 60 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there are a lot of things that Shane said after the game Sunday night, even since then that I've heard that it sounds like there was a game plan that just got completely thrown out the window after that fumble by Robbie Ashford. I mean, there was talking points about Shane saying we wanted to get Ashford in. We had situations and stuff we wanted to get him in for. We had a plan for it, and I get it. You fumble in the NFL, you fumble. You're not playing the rest of the game, but where was the consistency in the game plan? Because I don't think I don't know.
I think once they got to four, because we talked about this earlier on the show. I think going into this game, we kind of knew that South Carolina can't find a way to get behind in this game early because we haven't seen this team playing catch up, and I think we would have to see them play catch up to kind of believe that they can first. And I think once they got down 14-0, I'm sure the game plan probably went out the window a little bit because you knew okay, we really got to get going before Ole Miss starts running away with us. And I mean, to that point, the defense, I think, did what they had to do for the most part, outside of a few explosive plays to give the offense and give the team a chance to stay in the game. But I just think probably once it went down 4-0, Ole Miss had all that momentum. I think it just seemed like the offense could never get consistent or in a rhythm.
Yeah, and I think that the same way that we talk about Lenoris needing more reps, I still think that Shane needs more reps. I think that Shane he hasn't shown it to be a really great coach so far in his tenure, but there are so many things about him that show potential for him to be a really good coach, from recruiting, the way the team rallies around him. This team never quit in that game against Ole Miss. I mean, the team doesn't quit. It's probably difficult to have, 2 offensive coordinators in your first 4 years as a head coach. The defense seems to be turning a corner. And in this transfer era, you're going to lose players, but the idea is to upgrade in the portal where you can. And the majority of players that transfer from a program like South Carolina aren't necessarily transferring up necessarily. Yeah, you have the Juice Wells, but it's more, churning and burning the bottom part of your depth chart and your roster to try and improve. And I think over time that'll happen in South Carolina. But moving on, let's flush it. There's really nothing the Gamecocks can do at this point. Moving on to the Alabama game, I will say that regardless of what happened with Alabama and Vanderbilt this past weekend, and for my money, I put that almost up there with the upset that Appalachian State had over Michigan in the Big House. It was that level of an upset in my mind. I mean, no one thought in a million years that Vanderbilt would beat Alabama. Nick Saban or not Nick Saban, the way that Alabama's been rolling and where Vanderbilt has been, it was a monumental upset. And my hat is tipped to Vanderbilt and what Clark Lee's doing. That is a hard place to win, and to beat Alabama. Wow.
And it wasn't a fluke either. It wasn't just. I mean, Alabama probably didn't play up to its full potential, but Vanderbilt went out and they deserved that win. They had a great game plan offensively, and I mean, what they did sustaining drives, win the time of possession battle. I can't remember the exact numbers that it was, but it was something crazy how long they had the ball. So they went out there and they executed a game plan that was really good against that Alabama defense, and then did what they had to do defensively to get the win. But that Vanderbilt's win was no fluke in that one. They went out there and they deserved to win that one.
Yeah, and so, I mean, I guess where I'm taking this is moving on to Alabama. Gamecocks are a 21-point underdog. The over-under is 50.5. You do the math on that, and you're kind of looking at not good for the Gamecocks. I mean, you're kind of looking at I don't know, do the math out with me, Alex, 51, 40 to whatever. So, I mean, it doesn't look,
Yeah.
I mean, I can do it. I'm too lazy to do it right now. But I think this will be the biggest test of the Gamecocks this season. Not only because of the way they lost to LSU. Okay, well, you have Akron coming in, then you have a bye, right? So you kind of knew you were going to beat Akron, but then you have the bye week, and you lay an egg in your home stadium against let's call it what it is, a good Ole Miss team. I don't know if Ole Miss is top 5 in the country. I don't know if they're top 10, but they're top 15, and they played like it. They took advantage of everything that South Carolina did.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're going to go play Alabama, who's royally pissed off after losing to Vanderbilt, and you're going there to do it.
Yeah, like that. It's just asking like you put that, you say that, and it's just like, yeah, a lot's against South Carolina on this game. And I mean, it goes back to what I said earlier. Like the offense is going to have to take a huge step forward from what they showed against Ole Miss, like to have a chance in this game, because I think it's kind of the same of what we talked about with the Ole Miss game. Like Alabama's going to get their points, especially playing at home. Jalen Milroe, Ryan Williams is unreal. Like it's incredible how talented he is. So it's going to be a game where your offense has to take a huge step forward and be able to do what Vanderbilt did, is sustain drives, stay on the field on third down, get off the field on third downs defensively. So I think that's the game plan. And I think it's going to be an interesting matchup, because I think I'm just interested to see how this one goes down, because as you mentioned, Alabama's wanting to come off of that Vanderbilt game and get back on the field to that Vanderbilt game, and doing it at home, they're going to want to bounce back in a big way.
I mean, I think the things that are going to the Gamecocks' favor is it's a 12 noon game. Maybe you catch Tuscaloosa sleeping. Now let's not discount the emotional roller coaster that Alabama and their fans have been on over the past 2 weeks either.
Yeah.
Jumping out to that humongous lead against Georgia, fighting for their lives at the end. Ryan Williams just making the play of the season, in my opinion, to beat Georgia, battering down the hatchets and finding a way to win that game against Georgia. And then going to Vanderbilt, it's almost like, okay, we got through our big test. And then, you drop that one to Vandy. So Alabama's had a whirlwind. It's a 12 o'clock kickoff. Let's see what happens there. South Carolina has to get off the mat. I think that, two of the big keys I see in this game is the Gamecock offense, whether they go 3 and out, whether they get 2 first downs and a punt, 2 first downs or 10 first downs and a field goal, 10 first downs and a touchdown on a drive, they cannot turn the ball over in this game.
Mm-mm.
Can't do it.
Yeah, and I mean that's because, especially being on the road, like we talk about Ole Miss having momentum early in that game, and if you turn it over early in this one and let Alabama get all the momentum, like it can get out of hand quickly. And I think that leads me into another key. Like Alabama's probably going to punch you in the mouth early. You've got to be able to weather that first punch and then go from there and find a way to get this game into the fourth quarter and see what goes from there.
Yeah, and as well as this defense has played the majority of the season for South Carolina, I really do think that this is their biggest test. And I think it's because it's on the road, but I also think about, Jackson Dart had 45 yards rushing against South Carolina. If you let Jalen Milroe get 100, 150 yards rushing, and you cannot collapse with your linebackers, and Alabama hasn't had a great offensive line in a while. Their defense has been up and down, but this is just setting up, in my opinion, for a disaster for South Carolina, for a team that can't move the ball. Their defense has to do everything for them at this current point in time. This is one where I think you got to see Robbie Ashford, you got to see Lenore Sellers, and you got to do whatever you can to make this a 24-21 type game, in the fourth quarter, and just pray like hell you can get that last score that wins the game.
Yeah, I mean, if you let Jalen Milroe run all over you, that's going to make the defending Alabama even harder, just because of what he's really good with his arm too. Like, and if he's got running lanes, it's going to have where your linebackers are going to have to account for him and your defensive backs, and it can make it where it just gets really tough. So that's another big key, is find a way to contain Jalen Milroe and then kind of go from there defensively, see what you can do.
I mean, the half glass full mindset here is that Gamecocks have been running a vanilla offense, holding it all back for this stretch of games, and they knew how important it was, and they're going to throw things that Alabama's never seen. It's just such a big game for Alabama and Kalen DeBoer as well to bounce back. And Alabama is expecting to cover the spread. Their fans are expecting it. And if I don't care what happened in the Georgia game, if South Carolina goes in there and beats Alabama somehow, some way, Kalen DeBoer is feeling it. And that's a lot of pressure on the coach. With that said, Alex, I guess it's time for us to get to our predictions on this particular game. So far this season, I think we've both predicted South Carolina to win every game. I guess I'll go first, Alex, and I'll rip the Band-Aid off. I haven't seen anything from South Carolina this year to make me think that they can score as many points as Bama can. I mean, even in defeat against Vanderbilt, I mean, they still scored points. Gosh, I hate to do it, but at this point right now, I think it very well could be like an Alabama 41, Alabama 45, South Carolina 3 to 10 points. I really think it's going to be a bloodbath, and I hate saying that.
Yeah, I'm interested to see, just because we've mentioned them coming off the Vanderbilt loss. They're going to want to come out to Bryant-Denny Stadium and make a statement in this one. And you mentioned kind of the pressure that DeBoer would have on this, and if South Carolina wins this game. And I think the defense will continue to play well enough in this game. I just wonder if it'll be enough just because of the Jalen Milroe factor in this one and how much they're going to have to stop in this game. And offensively, I think it's just, we're in a point with the offense that just kind of a believe it to see it type of thing, if that they can keep up with an offense like Alabama. So I'm going to go Alabama 31, South Carolina 13.
Okay. So you got them covered. That's nice.
Yeah, it could be one of those where it's like a late touchdown too from South Carolina at that point in the game. But I don't know. Alabama's defense does have some holes that I think South Carolina can exploit, but it's just can they at the end of the day, can they do that? And I think that's something we have to see first.
Yeah, I agree. Unfortunately. All right. Well, real quick, I do want to update the SEC. Well, actually, before we do that, Alex, anything you can shed on the Kamara situation with the abrupt transfer today?
Yeah, it just seems like it's one of those things now that's becoming a norm in college football, which I don't think is great. But it kind of just sounds like he wanted a redshirt, and long story, and it just kind of things just went from there. That he wanted a redshirt for this season, and I don't think I think he's obviously going to end up transferring now. So I think I don't like the way that's going in college football. I don't think that's good for the sport, especially with this redshirt rule and then transferring. I just think, but that happened today, and so we'll see where this one goes.
Yeah, I don't know how you handle it if you're Shane Beamer. I don't know how you handle it with the other players on the team. I hope this has not become a trend at South Carolina, but you never know in this day and age. Let's see. Moving on, I do want to update SEC standings. Texas A&M is 5-1 on the season, but 3-0 in SEC play. Texas Longhorns and LSU have each only played one SEC game so far in the season, which is absolutely crazy to me. Georgia's 2-1, Arkansas is 2-1, Missouri 1-1, Tennessee 1-1, Vanderbilt 1-1, Ole Miss 1-1, Alabama 1-1, Oklahoma 1-1, Florida 1-1, South Carolina 1-2, Kentucky 1-2, Mississippi State 0-2, and Auburn 0-3. At this point in the season, Alex, I mean, granted we're 5 games in, give or take, for everybody. I don't think I've seen as much parity at this point in the SEC schedule. I mean, as crazy as it sounds, South Carolina is only a game and a half back in the SEC standings. And I guess I say all of that to say that this is the reason you're not seeing Beamer's team quit, because us as fans, and I should say us as media, and then the fans, they see 2 out of the last 3 games have not gone your way. And it's so easy to live in the moment. But I promise you that these kids are not living in the moment. Like, media members, they have to write an article every day. They have to talk about this every day. There's only so many things you can talk about in a day when you have 6 days between things to talk about. So you have to harp on the here and now. And go ahead.
Yeah, and I'm sure starting on Sunday, South Carolina, the team wants to forget about the game as much as they can. I'm sure they've moved on, and they've moved on, and they're getting ready for Alabama now. And I think, kind of as you mentioned, just seeing, there's the season's still in front of them. They can still accomplish many goals that they have if things can just get turned around. So I think they're still focused and wanting to see if they can find a way to go escape Tuscaloosa with a win.
Yeah, so lots of season ahead of the Gamecocks. Looking at it right now, I mean, they still have A&M, they still have Missouri, they have Vanderbilt on the schedule, they have Oklahoma on the schedule. They have more opportunities in front of them to climb the standings and hopefully get to a good bowl game. I mean, that's the goal at the end of the season. I mean, unfortunately for Gamecocks, unless you run the table, you're probably not going to be in the college football playoff. But crazier things have happened. Obviously you got that game with Clemson looming as well. Alex, just really quick, I don't think the SEC can get more than 4 teams in the college football playoff, and I think the number is probably going to end up being 2 or 3 when all is said and done. Because SEC is just such a bloodbath right now, and for whatever reason, the people that vote on this want to see the pretty 0 or the pretty 1 next to a team's name in the loss column.
Yeah, and I think right now I would lean toward my top 3 for who could get into the playoff from the SEC would probably be Texas, Georgia, and I think that third spot could kind of still be up. Like I think you still have some faith in Ole Miss that they could do it. I think you still have some faith that I still think Arkansas is a pretty good team, but I think Tennessee just maybe had a little bit of a letdown game there, just from that was kind of their first big test in that one. And so, but I think that offense, Josh Heupel's going to have that team ready to go, and that offense can score with anybody. So I think you still have some confidence that they could get into the playoff, and I think at the end they will.
Yeah, and I think Alabama on the flip side too. 4-1. Obviously, the loss to Vanderbilt stings and hurts, but they still have. I think they have games against LSU, Texas. I mean, they have more statement games ahead of them as well. So let's not kid ourselves in thinking Alabama isn't playing for college football playoff berth still, despite the loss. So
and Missouri, I think you still throw Missouri in there. Like they had that game where it just got out of hand versus A&M, but I think they have a little bit of a favorable schedule for how they can reach that playoff, and they're only sitting at 1 loss, so I think they are still right in that discussion as well.
Yeah, it'll be so interesting to follow this the entire season, just the entire playoff hunt with 12 teams, because I thought it was pretty easy to find 2 or 3, and in some cases 4 teams that clearly deserve to be in it over the past couple of years. But when you start nitpicking after the conference champions and all that get selected, and then the Notre Dame, who if they run the table the rest of the way, they're going to get in, and all of that. So it'll be fun to keep an eye on that. Alex, are you ready to move on to our best bets segment?
Let's do it.
All right, Alex. So I got bad news for you.
Am I still going downhill?
Any guesses on what your record was last week?
I'm trying to remember who I picked. So I know I picked Florida or UCF to win, so I didn't get that right. Did I get one right?
I'll tell you. Alabama minus 23.5.
Okay.
A&M minus 2. So
man.
I think you got that one though, didn't you?
Yeah, I got that one. I didn't get the Alabama, didn't get Florida.
Yeah. You didn't get Georgia minus 24. You did not get Stanford plus 9, and you didn't get the UCF one. So you are 16-14 on the season with a 1-4 record.
I've had 2 bad weeks now. I've let you get back into this one.
So coming into that, you were 15-10. Now you're 16-14. I came into last week 14-10-1. Let's see. I had under 48.5 on Missouri. I lost that one. I had Auburn plus 24. I got that one. I had FSU plus 14. Wish I'd gotten that one. 16 points. Ohio State minus 20.5. Got that one. And I had Tennessee minus 13.5. So I went 2-3. We are now tied in the wins column. I have 1 less loss than you, and I have a push. So you are 16-14. I am 16-13-1. So Alex, hit me with your best bets of the week.
All right. So first one I'm going with is Georgia Tech covers a 5.5 point spread over UNC this weekend.
So Georgia Tech plus 5.5. Where's that game played? Do you remember?
I think it's in Chapel Hill.
Okay, so Georgia Tech plus 5.5. I don't mind that one. All right, I'm gonna go, and I haven't looked at yours. I know you sent me these earlier. I just didn't have a chance to look. So we might actually have overlap here for the first time on this show, Alex. So I went the Texas-Oklahoma game, the Red River Shootout. Texas is the 14-point favorite, and the over/under is 49.5. And I took Texas minus 14.
Okay. That's going to be an interesting game, especially for South Carolina fans to watch it, just because Oklahoma next week, and Oklahoma's a banged up team, especially that wide receiver spot. So that one should be fun. That game's always fun to watch.
Yeah, and until Texas shows me that they're not going to destroy people.
Yeah.
And I mean, the Mississippi State game, whatever. I mean, that was the Manning kids, Archie Manning's first whatever run at it, Arch Manning. So I think Quinn Ewers is expected back for this game. So give me Texas minus 14. What you got next?
All right, next one I got Rutgers. They're playing Wisconsin this weekend. I got Rutgers covering 2.5.
So Rutgers minus 2.5?
Yeah.
Okay. Rutgers minus 2.5 for Alex. My next one, I am doing the Florida-Tennessee game. And that game, Tennessee is a 15.5-point favorite, and the over-under is 55.5. I am taking Tennessee minus 15.5.
Okay. So I actually have that one too. I did the under. I'm going to take the under in that one.
Okay. Alex taking the under. All right. So under, I'll put Alex beside that. So under 55.5. My thought process on this is I still think Florida's not a good team. The game is at Tennessee. Tennessee's coming off a loss. They still have one of the most explosive offenses in the country. I was a little scared of the over-under number because I was just wondering if Tennessee gets up by 28,
Right.
do they keep pushing the gas and go over the number, or is Florida backdoor it and get the over? But I don't think Florida is going to score very many points, and I think the way Tennessee scores so quickly, this game is just going to be over, and Florida's going to be trying to get out of Knoxville.
Right. Yeah, and I think with Tennessee's defense and how good they are, I wonder just how much Florida will be able to end up scoring in that one.
Yeah. All right. So we both had a pick in the Florida-Tennessee game. Penn State at Southern California. SoCal. Penn State is a 5.5-point favorite. The over-under is 50.5. Southern Cal is 3-2 right now. Penn State's 5-0. Penn State still has everything in the world to play for. I don't know if Southern Cal still feels the same way. I am taking Penn State minus 5.5, and I hate it.
I think I'd do the same thing, though, to be honest. I think, I like Penn State, and just being that they have to go pretty much cross country, I think that's an interesting point in this game. But, I think I think there's so many questions around Southern Cal still and what they can do.
I've seen Penn State just play down to the level of their competition so much when it's equal levels of talent on both sides of the ball. And I really do think that's a case where Penn State's going to win this game. It could be by 7. It could be by 4. It could be by 3. So that 5.5 number is kind of splitting the baby. And I'm just hoping that they win by 6 or more.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So next one I have is Georgia. They're a 34.5-point favorite of Mississippi State. Georgia's going to win, but they're not going to cover that number.
Oh, okay. So Mississippi State plus 34.5?
We saw Mississippi State have 34.5. We saw Mississippi State in that Texas game, that crazy spread, whatever it was. I still think they ended up covering in that one. I just don't. In these SEC games, I'm not a huge fan of these huge spreads, and I think Georgia wins this one comfortably, but Mississippi State covers.
I just don't know how much Georgia actually cares to cover spreads. I don't think that Kirby gives a rat's behind on covering spreads. So
I don't think they did this past weekend, right?
No, I mean they could have. I mean,
yeah.
So I don't know if you have this one, Alex, but arguably the game of the week is Ohio State at Oregon. I still don't know how Oregon's ranked this high in the country, but they are. And Ohio State is only a 3-point favorite in this game, over under 53.5. And I don't think that Ohio State's used to playing these games across the country. They play in bowl games all over the place. They're not scared to travel. I have Ohio State -3, and I really do wonder if Ohio State blows Oregon out.
Yeah, I could see. Also, I feel like it's hard to doubt Dan Lanning. Like, I think he's gonna have that team ready to go, and I don't know. I could see. I don't know. I don't think I probably wouldn't even touch that game because I don't think anybody really has a good idea as to how that one's gonna go. But I can see it really going either way.
Yeah, so we'll see. I mean, I'm putting my money on Ohio State right now, but they have hurt me in the past.
All right, so
what's
the
your
last
next
one I
one?
have. Yeah, LSU Ole Miss 64.5 is the over under. I'm going under in that one.
LSU Ole Miss under 63.5, right?
64.5.
Under 64.5. Okay. I picked that game too. And I did the same thing. I had it at 63.5. So you have it at 64.5. I'm going to take your 64.5 number because I like that
Take
one
the point.
better.
Go ahead, have a
So
point.
yeah, so Alex and I will either both get a win there or both get a loss there on our column. But it's the first time. I mean, it's kind of crazy after, how many picks is that? 30 picks that we've had a similar game.
Yeah. I mean, going to that LSU Ole Miss game, like 64.5, that's a lot of points. Or 63, whatever it is that we're taking. Like, that's a lot of points for, I think it's a night game too. I mean, like, I think Ole Miss wins that one, but just don't think it's going to be that many points scored in this one.
Oh, I think LSU has a chance. I think
So?
I think they have a chance, but it'll be interesting to see. I mean, the game is at LSU at night. That's going to be a crazy atmosphere. Ole Miss defense is looking better though.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I think the matchup is the LSU offense versus Ole Miss defense. Like, Ole Miss's defense, we saw it last week. Like, they're really good, especially up front. And so, it kind of goes back to what we were talking about, that South Carolina LSU matchup. It's going to be that defensive line versus offensive line. And that one, I mean, night game LSU is going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, I can't wait for it. I'm actually going to be on a bachelor party this weekend. So picked one of the best weekends in the college football season to have one of these things. So with that being said, y'all, that's going to do it for us tonight. We thank y'all so much for listening. When you join us for this, however you do, you give us your time, and that's the most valuable thing you have in the world, and we don't take it for granted at all. Make sure you're on thebigspur.com. Check out Alex's work. You can always reach either of us on the Big Spur. We would love to hear from you. So really appreciate y'all again. I hope you have a great, safe rest of the week. Stay out of this weather. If you're in Florida, hopefully you're out of there by now, but our prayers and our love are with anybody affected by this and to continue to be affected by Helene. So just prayers and thoughts with everybody. Hope everyone has a great rest of the week, and we will talk soon.